Now, construction of roads, schools and health facilities, as well as factories to produce consumer goods are some of the business opportunities in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is according to Equity Group CEO James Mwangi, who is working with the governments of Kenya and DRC in organizing a 15-day trade mission for 200 Kenyan businesses to the Central African nation. Mwangi says huge revenue receipts, also exports and minerals, and a population of 100 million people would see DRC power the economic growth on EAC to 10% annually on average if it joins the trading bloc. The Regional Council of Ministers are expected to deliver the final verdict on DRC's bid to join the EAC in 3 weeks. I had a conversation with the Equity Group CEO about this and more. Thank you so much, Dr. James Mwangi, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Let me take you to DRC. There's a lot of excitement with Equity Bank and the acquisitions also in DRC. What potential did Equity see in DRC?
We entered DRC 2005 when we acquired ProCredit, and then 2020 we acquired BCDC, the oldest bank, which is 113 years old.
And the second largest.
And combining the two has put us on the path of being the largest bank in DRC. We saw a huge opportunity in DRC on account of the population of the country, nearly 100 million people, a youthful population, but a country with very poor access to financial services. When we went to DRC, only 4% of the population had bank accounts, and that reminded me of Kenya in the early 90s. When I joined Equity, only 4% of Kenyans had bank accounts. So that is the huge opportunity we saw of providing Congolese with access to financial services. The last opportunity we saw is the endowment of DRC in terms of natural resources. Today, the world will not succeed in clean energy, particularly the electric cars, without DRC, because it produces 70% of the world cobalt, yes, and almost 50% of the world copper. So for electrical car industry to succeed, it will require DRC. DRC is the second largest holder of rare earth. So when it comes to technology platforms, particularly the mobile phone, DRC is required to provide the resources. And we also saw the potential in DRC generating hydropower and feeding the African continent. So we wanted to be part of the pioneers in funding DRC so that it can realize its potential.
What are some of the key sectors, apart from banking that you've mentioned, that could be of interest for investors?
DRC has the highest arable land, not just in Africa, but maybe anywhere in the world. So agriculture is a very huge opportunity. DRC has the second largest equatorial forest on earth. Again, the timber industry would be a huge opportunity for investors. But DRC, with a population of 100 million people, gives a huge opportunity for local and regional supply chains, particularly in manufacturing. Fast-moving consumer goods. DRC would be a very good place for anybody to set. And then lastly is a manufacturing opportunity. When you have 100 million people, whether you are manufacturing steel, whether you are manufacturing iron sheets, all those have that huge market. And DRC, it here borders with 11 countries, so it will be an appropriate country to invest in for cross-border trade. And lastly, is in the mining sector. Yes. We can't underestimate the opportunity that there is to unlock the massive natural resources DRC is endowed with. And there is also a huge opportunity of building infrastructure. Yes. DRC is as large as Western Europe, minus the infrastructure of Western Europe.
One of the issues that comes up when investors are talking about DRC is security because of the civil strife over the years. What has, since you've now been on the ground, what has been your experience?
DRC suffers from negative publicity. I would call them media stories that has painted DRC, and DRC has not been in a position to respond to clear that image. The gap between perception and reality in DRC is largest. It's where Kenya was again in the 1990s. The biggest challenge in DRC is what I would see the opportunity of building infrastructure. DRC is behind in infrastructure. DRC is behind in social services, schools, and health. And those are things. We at Equity Bank are already taking equity half year to DRC so as to start exporting our doctors in DRC. That is a huge opportunity. Yes. I believe in some of the entrepreneurs we are going with during the mission to DRC as infrastructure development, road construction. I hope Kenya will also be joining us because that is the biggest opportunity. Yet, DRC with stability has the ability to pay for its services because of its huge revenue from natural resources. Most of the global commodities that DRC exports have doubled in prices in the last 12 months. Yes. And so that excess cash is available to be used to transform the country. We have a very accountable government that has focused on governance and ruthlessly dealt with the corruption scourge in DRC. Yes. And so it is giving us hope that things will be much, much better. Yes. However, like any other country, DRC has its own challenges, but it's not challenges that would deter an investor or a trader engaging with DRC. We have been there for 7 years. We are one of the largest employers in the country other than the mining industry, and we haven't had an incident for the 7 years that we have been there with any of our 1,200 employees.
The president also has been very keen on joining the EAC, and we have seen the verification going on. What advantage will that bring to the member states? And I'm asking member states because Equity Bank is in all the member states of the EAC. What advantage will DRC inclusion bring?
It will almost increase the population of East African community by 65%. So an increase of population of 65 is very significant. DRC exports mineral resources, but imports almost everything else. So it can choose on joining East African community to redirect its supply chains from being global supply chains to local and regional supply chains. And that would lift East Africa by having an increased market of 100 million people. That is the power DRC would have. DRC, because of its natural resources, particularly water, DRC could be able to provide the East African community with very cheap hydroelectric energy that we can't get anywhere else. That energy will be clean and renewable energy, and that will be a game changer for this entire region. DRC has gravitas over the world because of its commodities, copper, cobalt, gold, name it, rare earth. No country maybe in the world can beat DRC in any of those commodities. So essentially what it means is that the voice of East Africa as a region the possibility of the region growing very, very rapidly to hit a 10% GDP growth rate can easily be realized because of the presence of a DRC. And lastly is to make the trade routes, from Mombasa to Eastern Congo, Kisangani, and join River Congo to Kinshasa, the one from Dar es Salaam through Lubumbashi. All those will then become open without barriers to trade because of free movement of goods and services within the region.
Last week there was an announcement, the government and also the bank announcing a trade mission in DRC from the end of November. Are we around 200 Kenyans, investors are expected to go? Being that Equity Bank is in several also EAC countries, are we also going to have investors from those countries? And maybe if you could also give us details of the trade mission.
His Excellency President Uhuru visited DRC in April, and Equity took advantage of that visit to enhance economic diplomacy when the President came to open our headquarters in DRC. During that occasion, the President challenged us as a private sector to lead uniting and creating one Africa and one people. And on that occasion, I assured the President I will be able to organize within the year to facilitate 200 Kenyan business people to visit DRC and strengthen a people-to-people relationship and take advantage of a bilateral agreement the President signed on that day of trade and investment and take advantage of it. Two protocols were signed on that day between Kenya Airways and Congo Airlines. And since then, we have seen Kenya Airways deploy 2 of its airplanes in the DRC. We have seen the government to facilitate trade open 2 additional trade consulars, one at Lubumbashi and the other one Goma, to facilitate trade. And it's on that basis then I thought we should then expose our Kenyan entrepreneurs to this massive market. We've made well. When we bought ProCredit, it was only 15 billion shillings. When we signed BCDC, it was 8 billion. That total was 95 billion. Since then, we have grown to a 400 billion balance sheet, 60% of the size of Kenya. So essentially, it is that opportunity we want to expose to our business people. So far, about 500 of our customers have expressed interest. Yes. But because of logistics and particular availability of hotel rooms, yes, we can't be able to take more than 200.
You've just mentioned around 500 investors who are interested in the trade mission. Of the 500, what are some of the sectors they are interested in?
It's all sectors. We have been very encouraged that even when you look at it, you see even the public sector. Yes. Hopefully we will be going with the managing director of Kenya Ports Authority because most of the goods and logistic work for DRC is done through Mombasa Port. Yes. So he will be able to establish a relationship with his customers. So if the opportunities is not just trade, it's also professional opportunities to support the country. So we'll be doing about 4 webinars before then to prepare those on the trade mission on the opportunities in DRC, which are fast and significant. So that is what we think. There is no sector that should. Tourism, trade, culture, hospitality, mining, forestry, trade itself, import and export, all those are available. And even social arms like education and health. We don't have the private schools that we have in Kenya, yet Congolese could be able to afford. We don't have private hospitals like we have in Kenya, yet Congolese, with all the money from mining, could be able to afford. So that, for me, is a white canvas for Kenyans to go and establish all the essential services, all the essential products and sectors within the country, within a country that has lagged behind for all those years.
Thank you very much, Dr. James Mwangi, for this conversation. It has given us confidence as Kenyans about DRC and the investment opportunities. So we'll definitely be covering the trade mission.